masters and servants of the holy will. Pungent is the odor borne upon the east wind, bringing to mankind a realization of the need to perfect the consciousness, to perfect the mind, to perfect the heart, to reckon with the need to sublimate the mortal will to the divine, to reckon with the need to sublimate oneself to the holy ordinances. For out of the holy ordinances is born the discipline of the Spirit that infires the heart toward a greater measure of devotion until the walk of the man-child into the Son is one culminating in the reception in the heart of the Son, when the Father, draping the mantle woven of sun-flame substance around the shoulder of the returning one, can say, "Welcome, this day have I begotten thee. Thou art my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Now, as we gaze upon the auras of humanity, we are once again aware of the fact that sordid measures have been taken by many, that darkness has been loved by them more than light, that they are continually being reminded of their need to seek pleasure and forget God. We, therefore, coming to you tonight, must remind you that those whom God loves, he also chastens. And therefore the chastening of the holy will is for the development in consciousness of greater awareness and a greater determination to overcome the negative sparks which are always scattered abroad wherever the children of men go. For the Babylonian concepts that of old have destroyed civilizations in the past are with mankind today, and they are volatile, and they are inflammatory, and they are shadowed substance, and they will never produce the elements of freedom that mankind need and require. We therefore say, traveler, awake. Traveler, take heed to the garments you take. Traveler, remember the need to do your washing. Remember the need for ablutions. Remember the need to recognize that insects are also sometimes beneath the boards. We therefore advocate that one should always keep his heart in the clouds, but should understand the need to gaze occasionally upon his shoes. For if one visits a friend of great dignity and culture, it is a custom that man should also dust his shoes and sometimes remove them from his feet. Simple things are sometimes needed for the spiritual journey, yet men are always seeking complex things. Many times lies themselves become most complex, and because they are so complex, humanity believes them, whereas if they were simple, they would more readily detect the fact that they are filled with nefarious, idiot ideas of the children of darkness. We, therefore, will call a spade, as you have put it, and say to you tonight that humanity that expects to escape with impunity while actually entering into a pact with the powers of darkness will certainly find out one day that they may well lose not only their garments but their very souls. And when this occurs and they find themselves in outer darkness where there is gnashing of teeth, pain and anguish, they will ask themselves why they did not pay heed to the laws of God and realize that they could, if they would, have become saints rather than those that this messenger lovingly referred to as ain'ts. You see, blessed ones, we also sometimes monitor your conversations and take note of how in your outer selves you are speaking words that are quite wise, although sometimes appearing to be very foolish. Will you then understand with me tonight that devotion is the requirement of the hour? It is the will of God that men should develop a greater sense of devotion. For devotion always becomes a chalice or a garment or a mantle that can cover a multitude of sins. Humanity may err, but when the fires of devotion are kindled in the soul and manifest in the heart, the error does not seem so pleasant, and men have a desire to shed it. They would clean escape from the unrighteousness of the error. They would find the grace of God to be a pleasantry, which they had not suspected that it would be. For unfortunately in this day and age, humanity are prone to think that religious matters are weighty matters, that they are heavy burdens to be borne, that they are filled with boredom and darkness, and all those engaged in these activities are foolish people who actually dwell in a house of lunacy. I would disabuse humanity of this idea, and I particularly would acquaint the students with the fact that so many have such foolish ideas, because many of you who have a heart full of devotion do not actually realize the thoughts that the world is thinking. And sometimes when you walk down the street and these arrows and slings of outrageous fortune are surrounding you, they will penetrate in an unguarded moment your aura and find lodging in your heart. Then, when you are meditating quietly at a later date, these arrows and slings of outrageous fortune can well cause humanity, and you specifically, to give rise to thoughts and voices that are not of the day but of the night. And when these events occur, you will sometimes find yourself nodding assent to them, simply because they are born in your own mind or heart, or so you think. We want you to understand that there are many times an inrushing of the thoughts and feelings of others, which are completely base and vile. They are not your own. They have no part of you, but they come into you because you do not take the necessary spiritual steps to protect your blessed consciousness and keep it in the will of God. The will of God is good. The will of God thunders from the mountain. The will of God flashes in the lightning. The will of God splits asunder the stone and reveals the light shining through the crack. Humanity then should understand that through a spirit of calm knowing, they can resurrect their energies from darkness into light. For the Christ is omnipresent. He is everywhere. By him all things were made. Yet humanity today, in their fear of religion, in their fear of God, which, blessed ones, they avow does not exist, are more or less fleeing to the mountains of delusions which they have actually heaped round about themselves. These delusions are delusions of the senses, which have tricked humanity again and again until they find themselves in such a chaotic position as to actually be twisted within themselves, within their thought processes, and unable to make a straight path for their feet to walk upon. Now the angels of goodwill surround us. Now the presence of the Most High draws nigh. The blue flame of the sacred fire, the eternal presence of the all-loving Father, full of grace and truth. God is born in your heart as a sunrise, as a new day, as a new thought, as an idea of righteousness, as an idea not of avoiding conflict, but of entering into it with one shield fully in place and with one sword in the right hand. For the sword is the word of truth. The sword lives as a flame to deflect error, and the shield of faith stands ready to protect humanity against these arrows. When I speak of arrows, I want to also say, out of the fires of honesty and fairness, that there are arrows that arise in the consciousness that come from the subconscious and subliminal levels of being. These arrows also are to be avoided. But men have said to me, how can we avoid the arrows that are buried in our own breast? Let me say to you that you are a part of God. You have no truck with the nonsense and vileness that has penetrated you in times past any more than you have with that which presently seeks entree to your world. You are a part of God's victory, of God's will. Obey then his will, and be content and joyous in your obedience. For as you pay allegiance to him, the truth, the way, and the life, as you pay homage to him, you are developing the power of true independence. For I want all of you to know that the Father has in his heart the great thought of sending forth the Son, even as a mother bird kicks out of her nest the little fledglings as soon as they are, in her opinion, able to fly. Many of you now, in your spiritual development, are coming to the point where occasionally the great law will cast you out of the nest to see if you will turn to the God power that you have already externalized within yourself and to the word of living truth, and if you will live by it or if you will flail or quail before the tremendous outpouring of the law. Do you understand? We are children of the light. We are children of the light, and we come from the ascended level in order to evoke a response from your hearts. We are concerned with developing in you awareness of your own God potential. When we sometimes fail in your eyes to pay attention to you when you call to us for specific aid, we want you to understand that the reason we do not answer as quickly as you think we should is because we want you to reckon with the vital fires of purpose already received by you, and that calm knowing already recorded in your consciousness. Do you think, in the name of heaven, that all that God has done for each of you upon this planet has been an act of his vanity? Do you think that the Lord has sent forth his light in order just to please himself? I tell you, nay. God has sent forth his light in order to please you by developing in you that purity and love, that fashion of the immaculate concept that will enable you to obtain victory over all outer circumstances. In heaven's name, you are not intended forever to actually be fastened to the paps, to be given milk constantly when you need and deserve the strong meat whereby you will grow into a mature Christhood. The consciousness of mankind for many centuries has always been involved in the idea of sin and the sinner. Man has always been obsessed with the idea of self-condemnation, and I cannot see, nor can the lords of karma or the princes in our realm, how humanity have actually profited by all of their groveling in a sinful state, by all of their entreaties to the deity for relief from all of these heavy sins, whether minor or major, that they have actually collected in their course and appointed rounds. We want you to understand then how that God would have you be free from this self-condemnation, for condemnation is a weight often heavy to be borne, which does not actually produce the purity that the law would evoke. Do you understand? The law will evoke purity because the law is purity. Man can be purified and whitened until he stands upon the threshing floor of God, shining and clean. Humanity today, because of their self-condemnation, are often actually cringing in fear of a future which they do not feel they can face because of some iniquitous act which they now hold from the halls of memory as more important than the great cosmic memory of God. I say to you then, in the name of Almighty God, resurrect from the halls of memory the transcendent power of God. Resurrect from the halls of memory the power you once knew before you took flesh form, when you stood before God and danced in the living flame as a part of himself. Why will you tarry here in the doldrums of mortal consciousness and in doing penance, when the greatest penance that any man can do is not to put upon himself a hair shirt, but is to recognize the reality of the power of God within his life, and then walk the way of the Christ. Move forward toward your Christhood, toward your victory and the obtaining of it. Can you reach out your hand and heal the leper? Can you remove from the mind and being of a fallen brother or sister the memory of a bad event? Then do it. Can you sustain a momentum of love to God that will blaze a pathway across the heavens like the aurora borealis? Can you write with letters of living fire upon the hearts of humanity, God is love? A simple act performed in his name is often more efficacious by far than some mighty act of following a proscribed pattern. God is the God of freedom, and whereas proscribed patterns are very effective for children, as men mature, they must understand that all emergencies, all conditions must be met. Fire must be met with fire, and water with water, and earth with earth. And heaven will meet earth, and heaven will transmute earth, and heaven will transmute darkness, and heaven will afford mankind the means whereby they can ascend the ladder of consciousness. Consciousness is a ladder. Will you view it as such? The radiance of God comes forth. The radiance of God enters the mind. And what do people do with it? They treat it as though it was a trivial thing. They accept it as though it was a dried up shard. They say to themselves, this is nothing, when all heaven and earth dances in preparation, when all heaven and earth wakes, when all heaven and earth sings to bring the glory of God to one soul. I remember many years ago in India how a young boy raised in the Brahmin faith was exposed to the Christian cross. And I remember how at inner levels the Devas worked very hard to gain the acceptance of the young man for the Christian cross, that he would understand that it was not a symbol against the gods with which he was familiar, but that it was representative of spiritual truth. You will probably understand when I tell you that the boy went into the temple and consulted with the priests in the temple and asked them what he should do about it, because he had been given this cross. And one of the priests told him to go and cast it into the river. Another told him to return it to the man who had given it to him. Another told him to hang it upside down upon the wall. But the boy could not do any of these acts, for when he went home, the Devas were there, and they were always singing and chanting to the little lad. And whenever he would touch the cross, they would sing and they would chant. And while he could not hear this with his physical ears, he felt something within his heart that caused him not to desire to turn against the cross. And therefore he hung it up upon the wall and gazed upon it daily. Eventually this young man became a Christian, and embracing Christ, he actually turned and in later life went back to the very temple where the priests were who had tried to teach him to desecrate it, and told them about the Lord. In fact, one of these he converted to Christianity and established him securely in the faith before he himself passed from the screen of life. I have told you this story to show you how that inner level activity, such as the action of the Devas, the angel beings, singing and chanting to the heart of the young lad, did produce an effect whereby beauty and understanding and tolerance was created in his heart. If men and women would only understand that the invisible world is more real than the visible, if they would only understand that the fires of the heart are more tangible than the fires upon the earthly hearth, I assure you that we would not have so much difficulty in creating love among the children of the light. For people say we love when they do not know the meaning of the word. If you love them, put your heart where your love is. If your love is in God, put your heart in God. For if you love the things of the world, and the things of God, you will find that you cannot serve, as the Master said, these two masters. And so, actually, in one way, dear heart, you will be losing both of them. If you serve two masters, you will lose both of them. You will lose heaven and you will lose earth. This is why the statement was made in Revelations. I would that thou wert hot or cold, but because thou art lukewarm, I will spew thee out of my mouth. Let the students understand then that the way to go is toward God, toward Christ, toward reality, toward the beauty of the soul, toward perfection, toward all things that will make a man a man. When this is done, I assure you that regret is not found at the end of the way. But when the last breath is taken, just before it is taken, before the consciousness ebbs out, when humanity looks back upon a callous life, lived entirely for the outer self, and find that they have not contributed to the growth of the planetary body in a spiritual way, I assure you that the individuals are many times seized with a terrible remorse, and that remorse need not be. For you can wake up, you can tonight make that high resolve, which we ourselves made in times past, by which we were able to have no fear of that which man would do to us, for we understood and recognized that only God was the arbiter of our destiny. You then should understand it also, for the time is come when the quickening power of light must produce the cosmic miracle of love upon the planet before the planet is destroyed through the splinter schisms that are now presently trying to be introduced in and between the various spiritual organizations upon the planet. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one God. There is only one God. There is only one divine image. You were all made in that image. You were made of one blood and one spirit, to dwell upon the face of the earth, to take dominion over it, to replenish it with light and love and life. Will you then understand that you have this power within yourselves? It is not a power vested entirely in outer movements, although it has produced a miracle in outer movements who have in many cases sustained a certain momentum of beauty and victory and love, a religious order of great sacredness for humanity. But the time has come for individuals to recognize that your body is the temple of God, that God dwelleth in you bodily, and that you can therefore accept him and find the great cathedral of being that expands from within yourself to be a temple in which the living Christ can be contacted, where this power can be developed, where the mystical body of Christ can be formed in you. And as it is done in one, it is done in all. And as it is done in all, there is a weaving together reminiscent of the time when Ezekiel witnessed in the valley of dry bones the coming together of the bones until a mighty army for the Lord stood up before him. This we would do. This we would create. This we shall do with your consent and with the will of God. In the name of Almighty God, in the name of the fires of love from out his heart, accept the power of the chalice of reality to make you no longer sentient beings responding to the drumbeat of darkness and discord, but cosmic beings responding to the eternal heartbeat of Almighty God. 1, 2, 3. The radiance will make you free. I thank you. Most gracious ladies and gentlemen, I come to you this afternoon in the fullness of Christ's love for the magnificent mother house you have envisioned in consciousness, and to pay tribute to those workmen who have established here a focus upon the coast of California for the sake of the children of God from the old days of Lemuria and from the old memories of other years and other civilizations, when we then also begun the game, destined to win this planet for God and for the victory of every life stream upon the planet, for the freedom of mankind and for the establishment of the immortal kingdom. Our hearts are full, and in gratitude to El Morya for his vision of peace and beauty to the world, I wish today to pay tribute to him, the Lord of the first ray, for all that he has done for humanity and for our endeavors. We work together, we serve together, we love together, and we are together in every aspect of our being with the Christ of all humanity, even Jesus the Christ and the universal Christ, one and the same. For I would call to the attention of those who are just beginning upon the spiritual pathway in the high adventure of the Spirit, that there is no conflict between the ascended masters, that all of us serve together as a perfect example for all that you also can be to one another as you come into that fullness of understanding that does not delineate and separate one individual from another, or set him apart as greater than another. For the greatness of potential is in all, and the greatness of potential is the greatness of freedom. It is the greatness of freedom that sets a man apart from the world until he chooses first and above all the kingdom of the Spirit. Now he who chooses the kingdom of the Spirit does not do despot to the world. He is honoring the world as God intends him to do it. For all who give to humanity the richness of the spiritual heart of hearts that beats behind the appearance of the physical heart are giving to humanity the greatest boon, the greatest power, the greatest radiance that they possibly could give, for it is the best part of themselves. The Spirit is always greater than matter, and whereas flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, the Spirit itself is the kingdom of God. And when men understand that, when they enter into the fullness of that, they can more easily put away their toys and begin the serious business of keeping the flame. The flame is, of course, the flame of the Holy Spirit, the flame of the whole I Spirit, the flame of the perfect radiance of the divine design, radiant in the central sun, radiant also in the centrosome of each cell. The power of the infinite light and law of God toward freedom buoys up and sustains the entire movement of the cell complex. And in addition to that is the power inherent within that centrosome that causes the whole cell to move toward its appointed goal of fulfillment, identifying it then with the one substance and the one spirit, so that it may be richly endowed with the intellect of God. For the intellect of God is the intelling, the infiring, the inspiring, the inspiral of celestial radiance, purpose and plan, codified and centered in the cell, so that it will carry out automatically the perfection God intends. This is an idea which I would convey to you concerning the whole complex of your lives. For if you will understand that there is already a built-in codification and identifier within your being, an authenticator of that which is real, you will, through developing faith in this, learn to identify all types of forces. And as you learn to identify forces, you will find that you will be developing a momentum for your own freedom. For freedom precious ones, is more than a name. Freedom is a game, and a serious business at that. For after all, is Sirius not the great central sun, the great God star? Then you see it is a serious business because it is the business of Sirius. And when you recognize this fact, although you may wear a smile upon your face and in your heart, it will enable you to understand the light from whence you came, and how you will fulfill your appointed rounds, and how you will carry out the divine plan given to you individually, and thus rejoin the great godparents of this system of worlds in the heart of the great central sun. For the hallways of the galaxies themselves are filled with pilgrims going onward from various systems of worlds as their evolutionary course has been run, and as they are being directed once again to return home, that they may then go out no more into form, but become a part of the great central ruling clan of the God Star. I hope that all of you understand that the goal fitting of which we speak is the most magnificent objective to which any individual upon this planet can aspire. It is an activity so grand, so noble, so full of purpose, as when it is once understood even in a small measure to provide a spur impetus to humanity whereby they will, through their own God-given free will, invoke from the heart of God enough celestial energy to overcome the obstacles that would bid them halt upon their pathway toward spiritual progress, and will bring them to a state of such relaxation and determination simultaneously that they can rest, that is, repose, in full confidence in the ideal and plan of God, and thus, through resting in the confidence of the mind of God, through resting and reposing in this celestial idea, they will be able to draw forth the needed energy to fulfill their goal. It is a dreadful thing when an individual is very young and aware of the pains of the world, and they wonder just how they can best serve their country, or their God, or themselves, or their family, or any fitting purpose. When these ideas come to them, and they ask themselves these inward questions, what shall I do? What can I do for my God, for my country? What can I do for my fellow men? How shall I fulfill my purposes? How shall I understand better why I am here? Then you see there is set into motion a search, and the search is almost like a journey into a far country, or a journey over unknown areas of the sea, where without chart and compass man seems to actually be adrift and subject to the elements and to a sense of drift. I recall very well how in the case of when I was embodied as Christopher Columbus, that as we were almost approaching the shores of the New World, the mutiny of the crew was a very distressing objective. For when I was acquainted with this fact by the first mate of our ship, when I was told that the crew was in mutiny and a state of great unrest, it brought great trouble to my soul, even though I was still full of faith and certain that the new land lay just beyond the ken of the mind and eye. And then, as we came closer, and the first land was sighted, when the cry, "Land ho!" rang from up above, I tell you, it removed a great burden not only from the hearts of the crew, but from myself. After this event had occurred, one by one, they came to me and asked for an interview, and they said, "O Captain, we are sorry. We are sorry that we thought to mutiny. We are sorry that we ourselves were actually slain by fear. We regret every move that we made. And now, you see, we understand that our original faith in you and in your mission was justified." And my heart sang within me, for I saw how God worked within them. Even when they were caught up in the bitterness of that moment of doubt, God was still sustaining within them enough of the faith and the flame that they did not cast me overboard or turn about once again towards Spain. Do you see then and understand how humanity today, because of the uncertainty of the times, and because they do not actually know in the fullness of their consciousness just which way to turn, are sometimes confused and uncertain in their probing for truth and in their search for God and reality? They themselves know moments of doubt, even as they know moments of faith. We should not then hold in our hearts any remnant of condemnation for those who may, out of uncertainty, momentarily move toward the left when they should be moving toward the right. And so as I come to you today, I set before you the great cosmic prize of the moment. This prize is the recognition of your own inherent worth. Each of you endowed by God with numerous gifts of the Spirit, gifts of the intellect, gifts of an internal dominance, a desire to reach out and to master your environment and world, can well understand that you serve as an example to others among mankind, those acquainted with you, those who know you, those who look to you for guidance. Will you understand then what I say to you now when I advise you to recognize the great potential good that you can do in the world of form as you strengthen yourself in the faith until you become a bulwark of faith, a great craggy hulk of spiritual reality and God determination? Do you know what it means to be able to dominate a situation? For the very word dominion itself is a word so closely identified with God. Dominus identifies with God, and dominion identifies with the taking of divine dominion over the affairs of your lives and over the earth. Humanity today have desired not to take dominion over the earth, but to take dominion over each other. And because they desire to command and dominate one another, to feel a spirit of competition with one another, they are dissipating their energies in diverse directions. And therefore all of the cosmic energy released to humanity today that is intended to bind up the wounds of the world and create a climate of peaceful coexistence for the varying factions of life, instead of being spent for the purposes intended, is being dissipated and often actually channeled into courses of resistance against the very movements it was intended to serve. As I speak to you then today, in this wise, I expect all of you to be able to apprise the world situation from an entirely different standpoint, and to understand the cry of the great Master Jesus so long ago, "Father, forgive them, they know not what they do." Many today know not what they do. Many today are in the strange center of uncertainty. They do not seem to have the energy either to roll backward or forward, but remain fixed in a certain present course, which does not satisfy them nor their soul. But for some unknown reason to them, they do not seem to be able to shake. I therefore, Saint Germain, call to you today to recognize the potential of a forward movement such as the Summit Lighthouse, such as the Keepers of the Flame, to act as an avant-garde spur to humanity, to be a platform and forum for the release of our special information bulletins, for all of the various pieces of information and points of instruction that we desire to give and can give. Therefore you will understand how it is necessary for the varying parts of the body of God upon earth to be informed, so that the right hand does know what the left hand is doing, and we have a concerted action of humanity under the flame, the divine flame, moving forward into the light, and filled with the pulsations of the light. I recognize today that there are many here who have had no contact with the Holy Spirit, so epitomized by the Mahachohan. I realize today that there are many whose only and sole approach to God is an intellectual approach, whereby they rationalize in their consciousness and say, certainly all these things could not have formed themselves. Therefore, they must have been formed by something. And because something cannot actually be born out of nothing, that from which they have been born must itself be a creative force. And hence they come to a state where they recognize the existence of creative power, creative intelligence, and creative reality. Somehow or other, many are actually today, by reason of the world's thought, offended to call this God. Yet, after all, we are speaking of God, not as a person, but as the manifestation of the fullness of all creative energy throughout the universe, not only in its dissipation, but also in its concentration. Its dissipation in space is often registered upon the consciousness, but few stop to think about the concentration of the God energy that actually gives definition to reality and provides a cellular manifestation, a personal manifestation, and the manifestation of consciousness. For I tell you, blessed ones, that the flint can be struck, but until the spark flies forth and ignites the tinder, until the spark flies forth and ignites the straw, until there is manifestation in the world of form, people say, we see but a spark in the dark. What is the meaning of these two stones being cast together? It has no purpose. But when the flame springs forth, then the purpose becomes known. And so it is with wisdom itself and the very purposes of life. Life itself, when it is understood, becomes a conflagration, a fire of the Spirit. And it blazes across the margin of the world. And the world itself comes to a knowledge of the divine. So many people today, living a vegetable life, living in the world of form as a human vegetable, gaze out upon the world and upon the stars, and beat their hands against their breasts and say, how long and for what purpose? These do not understand the soul that is within, nor do they give the soul voice. These do not open the door of their being to the beatings of the soul, so manifest in their hearts. These instead accept the pallid jungle rhythms of the world order, now so in the hands of the spoilers and distorters of reality, who, because they desire to bend the minds of man through the power of hypnosis and all of the various devices now available to them, are doing so to the hurt and harm of the world and the little children of the future civilization. We then urge upon humanity the understanding of the need to strike a blow in the name of God, to hold the torch up high, to recognize that you do not have forever to decide the destiny of this age. For this age has actually come to a place where it is ready to rush over the brink into self-destruction. I dare not conceal this from you. There are those who are afraid concerning the elements. These fear the manifestation of the elements in revolt against man's nefarious activity. These are afraid of earthquakes. These are afraid of floods, of tidal waves. They are afraid also of the human dragon, the human beast, that when the human beast is unleashed and mankind begin to wreak violence upon one another, that they will destroy this age completely. And I tell you, precious ones, this has occurred before in history. Some of you recall how long ago I sought to found the United States of Europe. You remember how I came to Napoleon, and how I sought to inspire him in his conquest even, so that he would create a United States of Europe, thus putting an end to the need for conflict between the varying governments then in existence. Because my word was not heeded, of course. You see the terrible activities that came forth afterward. Destruction and death to many. Today I have spoken, and I have spoken in the past, and my desire has always been to fulfill the purposes for which this great nation, under God, came forth, foreordained and forsworn by its sponsors, to perpetuate a constitutional government for and on behalf of the people, where the needs of the people would be served. But the moment a benign organization takes shape, The moment a benign organization is conceived, immediately the spoilers are preparing their plans for its destruction. And how do they do it? They do it, precious ones, of course, through an activity of creating illusion in the minds of the people, an illusion that is false. Thereby they create in the minds of the people an idea that what they have is not providing them with the things that they want within the framework even of the present government of the United States. There are various safeguards still in existence, if humanity will recognize it, whereby the laws can be enforced and created that will enable mankind to rise out of the present stage of doldrums, the present stage of disillusion, to the point where the forces of nature, now in conspiracy and revolt against man for all that man has done to nature, can reverse the process and see that nature will work once again with humanity. You have recently observed, even throughout this winter, some of the special activities in nature which could be compared to the statement, Atlas shrugged. For Atlas here is representative of nature, and nature herself in her gigantic proportions, the power of the wind, the power of a cyclone, the power of a tornado, the power of the earthquake, the power of famine, the power of flood, the power of heat and cold, and all of the vast energy pools of nature, can herself revolt against the impositions humanity have actually created against mankind now. For you see, humanity, when they create wrongly, are creating wrongly against themselves. And the forces of nature receive a mandate from man which they must carry out. They have no choice in the matter. And I assure you that when a forest fire sweeps across the great forest, no one is so frightened as the poor little elementals who leap and dance in the flame and realize that they are wreaking destruction upon the great creative empire of God that manifests throughout nature. I hope that you will understand what I am speaking about, for so many individuals today, in the superstitious lore of the past, have the idea that God himself desires to create harm and destructivity to humanity. God has no such desire in every past age, and I have presided over these past ages, and long ago witnessed the same cycles repetitiously devouring civilizations. Therefore I say to all of you, humanity must wake up and recognize that it is not God. It is not God. It is not God. It is not nature. It is not nature. It is not nature. It is man, in his inhumanity to man, in his failure to apprehend his purposes for existence, that creates the conditions which nature is duty-bound to carry out because of the inherent patterns of guardianship established over the tree of life. We of the Great White Brotherhood have caused to be painted a certain painting by a precious life stream in a state above your own. This painting, precious ones, is now in La Tourelle, and this painting depicts the guardianship of the tree of life. It is entitled Jerusalem, Jerusalem, and it is the intention of the Keepers of the Flame fraternity to place it here on exhibit in the mother house of the Keepers of the Flame, so that we can focalize here, for the blessing of the students and all mankind, the wondrous power of the chanting of the lost word and the word of protection which is given to humanity in order to protect them against themselves. For I assure you that mankind, who are now products of their own environment rather than products of the creative power of God, are often, as you might say, bent on destruction and determined to destroy one another. This they do by violent wars. This they do by exhibits of the ego. This they do whenever they seek to wrest power from one another, even through the rituals of witchcraft and destructivity. When they do these activities, precious ones, they are usurping the authority of many life streams and diverting the energy of many life streams into their own hands, that they may command energy. They desire then to be a ruler over other men rather than be a ruler over themselves. Every one of us in the ascended realm are rulers of ourselves, and we first established ourselves with God. This is always necessary. It is the first step that a soul must take in order to be able to serve humanity well. Therefore, I say to you, the way to the tree of life must be guarded, and all of the activity of nature that is itself in a state of flux, standing there and heeding the mandates mankind release of violence and destruction, does then have no choice but to obey. Nature obeys the edicts of man, and when man establishes the edicts of perfection, nature will produce perfection before man's view. And I tell you that the subtropical climates now existing here in California and the climates existing even in the realm of the equator can be transferred even to the area of Alaska. There is no reason whatsoever why nature cannot produce the beauty of abundance everywhere once humanity understand how to work with elemental life. And this they are taught by God through their love expressed to one another. When they fail to express this love toward one another and insist on having their own way, they set up counter patterns, antichrist patterns, as an antipode of all that God would do for humanity. And therefore there is a manifestation of a destructive element, and this element can wax worse and worse as mankind, deceiving themselves and being deceived, continue to rush madly on a course bent toward destruction. We then, who are the elder brothers of the race, in our solemn and radiant moments of cosmic lucidity, when, as we come into the atmosphere of the earth, we can recover sufficiently from the onslaughts of human breath directed against us, do bring forth these manifestations, these dictations, these words of perfection to humanity as admonishment. For I assure you that the gusts of humanity's energy often makes us exceedingly uncomfortable, so that we are almost prone to withdraw even when we intend to come forward with our services. Some of you who are almost ready for your ascension, when you attain to the same stature, will know exactly what I mean. Therefore I say to you, each and every one of you, regardless of what your state of progress is, recognize that God is everywhere. Therefore he is within you. And understand that the cultivation of your solar being is a responsibility of your soul self. You have a brotherhood established here. There is a brotherhood of light standing beyond the veil. The brotherhood of light does assist you. The brotherhood of light assists you. The activity of the brotherhood assists you. But you also, in the final analysis, must assist yourselves. You must do it by God determination that nothing shall disturb you, that nothing shall be allowed to mount up in your mind in a distorted way so that you will be unable to recognize your rightful place. I hope you understand exactly what I mean. For what I mean to convey to you is that you should not distort some small idea, some small imperfection in yourselves or another into a great behemoth, a monster that can never be an accurate presentation of justice and reality. As you expect mercy from others, you must give mercy to others. As you expect fairness from others, you must give justice to others. Precious ones of the light, the golden rule has not been abrogated. The golden rule remains intensified and strengthened. And today, as humanity are given so much knowledge, we are more than ever exacting an accounting of that knowledge from humanity. And this is why the beloved archangel yesterday uttered the fiat which he did, which was intended to awaken the mankind of earth in the sense of those whom I love, I chasten. Will you understand then that today, in the present peril, humanity need to band together more than ever before and to keep the flame of God. For this flame, released to every religion of the past, has also failed to be kept by every religion of the past. Each one has allowed the torch to fall to the earth. Each one has allowed the torch to go out. Each one has watched the dying blaze. In some cases, men have applauded it, as in the present time, when because of communistic influences and the teachings of atheism in the schools, first to the professors and then through the professors to the students, humanity has more and more, in the words of El Morya, infected one another with the diseases of darkness. until the present age stands upon the brink then of all of this perdition and self-destruction. Some of you said to yourself, when you first heard me speaking these words, oh, are we going to have to listen once again to a discourse upon the awful state of the world? Well, precious ones, I tell you this. Would you rather have me tell you how wonderful you are, how wonderful the world is, and pat everyone on the back as they silently steal toward Hades? Or would you rather have me give you the truth, that the truth may make you free while there is still time to save the breath, to save humanity, to once again reinfuse the dying corpse with the breath of life and restore him to youth, to loveliness, to perfection, and once again to the business of keeping the flame on a world scale? For when humanity keep the flame on a world scale, when humanity keep the flame together across the margin of the world, then the golden age is not waited for. The golden age is here. Keep on keeping on. Keep on keeping the flame. Keep on holding up the torch. Is there anything else you can do? Thank you. So complete, carry the secrets of our heart back to God, that there we may start a new cycle of hope to the earth, a new cycle of a feeling of spiritual worth, that man may see and know that by the bonds of freedom he may glow and shatter all his false concepts in the transcendence of the rising fire in the torch of freedom. From the heart of God, from the heart of the Great White Brotherhood, from the heart of the Masters of Wisdom, through the celestial hierarchy and by the fires of the sun, may we clearly perceive a long avenue of service before us, not an avenue of years filled with human fears, but an avenue of hope, an endless street paved with the gold of cosmic wisdom. May we see that our precious little holy washed or unwashed feet may trod this road that looms ahead. May we let flow through our consciousness every erg of energy that we can spare for the purposes of the kingdom. May we understand that the highest gift that we can give is ourselves. And all who give themselves and lose themselves in the gift will find themselves once again ever with God, ever with God, ever with God. They are immortal, deathless, birthless beings. This is life. All else must decay and fade away and be changed. dissolved and raised back to the sun for repolarization. This is the law. We stand before it in holy awe every moment of our lives. The sign of the heart, of the head and the hand to you. May the peace of your presence abide with you wherever you are, wherever you go. May the glorious peace of your presence flow. Through days of service and nights of rest, may the peace of your presence keep you blessed. The sign of the heart, of the head and the hand to you. May Lord Gautama's and Jesus' cosmic cross of white fire watch between thee and me as we are absent the one from the other and ever present with the Lord. You are keepers of the flame. May you all one day enjoy the privilege, through service and through love, of being raised by the Knight Commander to become a Knight of the Flame, a Lady of the Flame, one in waiting upon the Lord as his handmaid or his servant. To you all now then goes our love. On behalf of the fraternity, I say, Amen. In the stillness of the light, man comes to understanding. And my first descriptive vignette will be to create the image of a tree with concentric rings. Your lives are full of energy, qualified through the centuries and millenniums, qualified through the aeons, qualified now by you, consciously and sometimes subconsciously, as energies that are not your own, seek to dominate that wonderful supremacy of the free will that God so lovingly gave. I come then in this picture of the rings of the trees to say to you that if you will think of the many, many years of living in which your energies in the teeth thereof have been engaged, you will recognize that these rings contain within them the substance of both darkness and light. You will recognize that there is contained therein the substance of happiness and sorrow. You will recognize that the opposite forces are often pitted against one another in the very life records that you yourselves have made. And inasmuch as we are referring to a solidification of energy as record, and inasmuch as all energy that is qualified must also, in due course of time, yield its qualification to the principle of judgment and balance, so it should be clear to each of the students that one of the most glorious opportunities that can come to the soul is the opportunity of balancing one's karma, the opportunity of cleansing the rings of the trees of all residual substance which is not compatible with the onward march of the soul. And so tonight, as I am speaking to you, I would like you to place your attention, at least through this portion of my address, upon the fact that you do have a life record, that this life record is, as I have said before, composed of both benign and malignant substance. Malignant in the sense that wherever malice has used your mind or consciousness to ray out upon life the unfortunate vibratory action of hatred, it will always return to your own doorstep for redemption. But remember, beloved ones of the light, as the hierarchy has so well instructed you in the past, light is stronger than darkness, for darkness itself is but an absence of the light. And when men understand this, and understand that the unrealities which they have created have merely placed shadowed substance in their world for redemption, they will recognize that there is a need to fill these vacant shadowed spaces with the beautiful radiance of the light and the creative manifestation of your life streams down through the years. You cannot do it all tonight, for I perceive that immediately that I spoke in this wise, some of you said to yourselves, "Oh, I know it is there, and I want so very much to change it all." Now, of course, I think that motivation is one of the most important steps that anyone can take. And if you will recognize that to be divinely motivated is itself an initial step which will carry you much further through the initiatic processes, you will recognize that to take that step now and to determine to have occur in your worlds a mighty program of purification is indeed an opportunity whereby the great circular, circumferential scroll that is actually contained within this tree of life record of each individual can be opened up as one unwinds a scroll and laid in linear form upon the ground before us, where the life record can be read. And most important of all, more important than the reading thereof, and the mulling over of old ideas that are not too benign from the memory storehouse, is the idea of just absorbing the concept that the records that are made consist of both good and bad etchings. Naturally, you need not be concerned with the benign etchings. They will take care of themselves and find their way into the great causal body, where they will provide great impetus to you in moments of need in the storehouses of heaven, the treasures of heaven being released on call for the manifestation of good in your world and the world of others. What you should be concerned with then is the cleaning up of the life record of impurity, of misunderstanding that was actually created in ignorance. And therefore, some of you have probably already noticed we are creating a certain amount of heat in the room itself, which is not at all the heat of your physical bodies. This heat is a transmutative effort of the hierarchy that is occurring in order to clear the way for a more glorious manifestation of light in the dictations and portions of the class that have not yet come. These unpleasantries, if you can call them that then, are actually created in order to produce a more beautiful resurrection flame within you. And when this resurrection flame, with its mighty white fire core, glows into manifestation through your flesh form, through your spirit and through your mind, it will enliven the mind and the consciousness with a greater awareness of God, and many of you will come to feel that you do not any longer just live in your own life, but you will begin to live in the lives of one another, as though some impulse of the deity had suddenly attached itself to your form, to your consciousness, to your being, and to your world, and thus enabled you to actually sense the radiance of God in other lives. This is a beautiful experience, for it is the first step that man takes on the road to true brotherhood. For when men feel that other parts of life are a part of themselves, they will always hesitate to pronounce judgment. They will always hesitate to be unkind. Understanding must be given to oneself, for after all, if not, unpleasantness will occur as one part of the body does harm to another part. But when individuals are obsessed with the idea that they are a law unto themselves, that they can with impunity wreak havoc upon others, then you see there is often a certain degree of rashness that occurs in their consciousness, a feeling that they are not responsible, and therefore they can do as they will. When the law is understood by a life stream, it immediately assumes the form of restraint, and this is good, for it stops the activity of negative karma. But the type of restraint that is merely evoked as a result of the fear of negative karma is not nearly as strong as the type of restraint that comes about as the result of one's awareness that he is a part of everyone. Through this consciousness, men are able to feel that others are also very much a part of themselves. And as all begin to enter into this spirit of love, they will then be able to understand some phases of the Tibetan religion and of the religions of the Far East, which seem at first sight to fit the description of some of the theologians of the West to be a pantheistic religion. But when one understands the beauty of the divine experience within as a drawing nigh not only unto God, but also unto other men, in reality, one learns to negate the negative manifestations in their world, to blot out the concepts that they are vile, that they are ignorant, that they are poor, that they are old, that they are sick, that they are weak, and to replace them by the everlasting concepts of the deity, that man is an immortal spirit, traveling to a bourne of infinite light and love, where the radiant compassions of the hierarchy will enfold him in the mantle of holy wisdom, until he will understand that there are vast and mighty purposes in life completely foreign to the outer consciousness, which must then be conveyed through a higher medium of light radiance to the consciousness of man in the inward parts thereof, sometimes not even becoming defined in worded expressions, but being a subtle feeling which manifests there with its own strange equation that produces the miracle of happiness, because one simply knows without finding it necessary to record these experiences in the language of the craft. As I come to you then, speaking of the inner light of the symbolic masonry of the Spirit, I am sure that you will recognize the great potential that exists in the deciphering of the hieroglyphs of the hierarchy. These experiences, of course, cannot be imparted to the neophyte or the beginner, yet he who is advanced will often say to himself, I am a neophyte, because he recognizes that the great peril to all advancement is human pride and ego. When individuals on the spiritual path begin to conceive of the idea that they are unique, that no one else is like them, what they have conceived of may be ever so true, but it must also be recognized that it is a point of danger to overemphasize this unique quality of being. For when individuals become enamored with their own unique qualities, they are sometimes victims of a subtle pride that seems to set them apart and above their fellow men. This often occurs upon the spiritual path, and has been the cause of the downfall of many avatars almost. And when I say the modifying word almost, I am referencing souls who have come so far upon the path that the crown of the avatar was actually held over their head, and the hierophants were prepared to lower it when the pride of the individual was read as a part of the life record of that individual embodiment. And then the challenge was issued by the advocates, and the advocates, in issuing their challenge, found that the judges could not help but deny the crown to the individual at the supreme moment of conferment, simply because the individual's pride would not permit the law of God to act and confer it. Thus we understand that pride goeth before a fall, and that God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. I speak to you in this wise tonight, because we have the life record before us of many who are known to you in the occult world. We choose, however, because of the strange juxtaposition in which the consciousness of man becomes placed when we name names, to avoid the naming of actual names. But we could draw from the life records, from Akasha, the splendid life records of many who have made it all the way to their ascension and their victory. Yet at the same time, others who also walked in their same class and were classmates of these great ones did not make it because of the subtleties of pride which actually entered into their consciousness. Many times the laws of God will act upon man to restrain his pride, to prevent him from actually falling. God will permit a thorn to express itself momentarily in his flesh, in his consciousness. There will ride in some vibratory action which will cause him distress, and he will stumble momentarily. This is not an act of God tempting man, for God does not tempt man, but it is an act of the hierarchy designed to prevent a soul that has performed a very meritorious service to life from losing his crown or becoming a castaway through this subtle quality of pride. The reason I have stressed this tonight is because there is a great adventure now being planned for many of the students of the light who have been faithful to the light for what seems to us from our level almost as centuries, for we have helped them through vast and almost horrid struggles, whereby their physical existence has sometimes been challenged, where their mental existence has been challenged, where their spirit has been tried most sorely. I say then that they have suffered physical illness. I say then that they have suffered mental illness. I say then that they have suffered spiritual illness, that they have been ailing. And this condition is not the will of God at all, nor of the hierarchy, but it is a conspiracy of karma and events which comes to them sometimes to test them, and sometimes comes to them simply because there are enemies in the world that scatter abroad the arrows and slings of outrageous fortune and oppose the victory of the children of the light. The students should understand the need then to protect themselves with the tube of light, with the violet flame, with invocations daily made to the masters, that they may be indeed surrounded with the mighty fire of God. This fire of God, when drawn forth, becomes an armor to the soul. Now, may I momentarily begin the process of lifting the heat that some of you have found a bit uncomfortable, and radiate to you the coolness of the Himalayan snows. May I flood your souls with a sense of the beauty of a rose. May I touch you with the delicate hues of the sky in the far-off lands that seek to draw nigh, the heaven world of holiness, the way of peace and joy's caress. This beauty ray I bring today can transport all your cares away and cast them in to flame and light, to be consumed and be no blight to you, either now or any other hour. Will you then surrender gently that pack of human effluvia and troubles of which you are conscious? Do you know, blessed ones, I am going to give you an illustration of the drama of the law. If you consciously elect tonight to take all of the known troubles in your world and put them together as in a pack and give them to the angels of love and wisdom to carry away, and the angels of love and wisdom are completely capable of doing just that. Do you know what can occur? Well, I want to tell you. As you consciously gather your known troubles, and sometimes they are many, they can magnetize out of the concentric rings of the self the unknown troubles. They can draw them out, and thus you can lose a great deal of karmic refuse which the great law would assist you to transmute. You have heard it said that God loved Abraham of old and did not impute to him sin. Are you aware of the power of the hierarchy to forgive sins? Are you aware of the law involved in it? When the hierarchy forgives sins to humanity, it postpones or delays the karmic recompense, thus setting the soul free to be on its course, on its heavenly way, to gain a greater momentum of strength and glory for the overcoming victory. But the life record is transferred to other times, or sometimes beyond the veil into the ascension, where a life stream can then handle their debts to life with greater ease from a level of victory rather than a level of defeat and strain. This is an act of mercy of the great law, and it is the desire of the hierarchy to impart to you the knowledge of this event, that the hope that I bring may buoy up the souls of all of you, that you will understand this mystery and will thus take advantage of it. Through exposure to the hierarchy, through contact with the masters of wisdom, you are able to be given a boost by cosmic law, which is the same type of assistance that you sometimes give to one another when you who are wise will wrap one arm around a dear friend and say to him, the way you have been going is a loss to your being. Let me point out to you a blueprint, a roadmap of cosmic adventure, a way in which your lives can become more sublime. And when the call is heeded and the friend is able to convey his message of hope and love to another, that one does find release from many of his problems. And the guidance of the more mature and loving individual becomes a way of compassion expressed often among mankind as human friendships, like unto Damon and Pythias. And so as I come to you then, even now, it is my wish and the wish of the hierarchy of the Great White Brotherhood to give you this gift. Now some of you may say, can this gift be extended to those who are not here in physical person, those who are not present, that they may also receive it? And the answer tonight must, I am sad to say, be no. No one who reads this particular address can receive this grant, only those who are here. For the time has come in the great gathering together of souls when we must create in the student body the understanding, as Moria has so ably put it, that the trek is worth the inconvenience. Men must understand, who have given so much of their energy to outer world conditions, to games, to events, to curious adventures toward entertainment, that the time now that God has given to them ought to be spent on the high road of spiritual adventure. That self-discovery ought to be the forte of the God-seeker, that he who is the God-seeker may become the God-realized man. The hierarchy are much concerned because we are not able in this world of form to find many priests suitable for candidacy in the priesthood of Melchizedek. We are not able to find many candidates for the ascension upon the planetary body. The great vanguard of cosmic opportunity has flashed forth. The mighty rider has pulled hard upon the bridle and then given his cry, move forward. He has slapped the horse upon the flank, and the leap has occurred, and now the foam is manifesting around the mouth, and the horse is a-sweat and moving forward tremendously. And the rider astride looks upon humanity and finds that humanity are behind, too far behind. They have not followed the leader upon the white horse. They have not followed the Christ. They stand now as children playing with toys. They will not put away their games. They prefer dabbling in black magic, in witchcraft, in variance, in strife, in sexology, and in deceit, to that which will make sacred their being, to that study of the occult, of the mystical, of the being of man, toward adeptship, toward cooperation with the hierarchy, toward enfoldment in the radiance of the hierarchy, toward the gathering together, great and magnificent cells in the body of God, centers and focuses of light upon the planetary body, houses of instruction, sacred places where the hieroglyphs of the ages and the conveyances of the masters of wisdom may be made. Will you then permit understanding to descend into the force field of your consciousness? Will you shatter the delusions that have surrounded your consciousness? Will you recognize the need to do it? Atasha! Let the light radiate. Let karmic patterns be shattered. Let the light be a hammer and anvil. Let carnality be destroyed. Let the gentle radiance of the Spirit seep into your pores. Let the marvelous and fantastic light of the presence pour its radiance through your flesh form. Drink of the elixir, the nectar, the amritsar, the beauty of the hierarchy, of the brothers of light and love. Drink deeply, receive the one Spirit that made ye all. Draw nigh unto me, he has said, and I will draw nigh unto you. We long ago saw his star. We long ago knew the camaraderie of high adventure as we came out of the Chaldees and the mystic lands of the Far East, as we came to bear gifts to the young king who would never wear an earthly crown again. Yet God has reserved a crown for every man. It is the crown of Christ the King. For he who gave himself to man gave also his crown to all. He bequeathed it to all, and it is the Sefer. It is the encircling radiance that rests upon the head. And who is the head? Christ is the head of every man. Will you then close the gap? Will you close the gap between the horse and the rider and the multitude of the avant-garde teachers, instructors in righteousness, children of the sun, initiates, seekers, compatriots, friends of light, those who will raise up and understand the need today to point the way to the youth of the world with the realities of God? Will you understand that this is the most important work that any man can do, because in his service to others, in his service to self, in his service to God, in his service to truth, he is obtaining the mastery God intends. Hierarchy awaits our knowledge. We would impart to all the science of the divine astrology, the science of the divine alchemy, the science of the knowledge of being, the cosmic ontology, the open sesame that will enable man to heal all his own diseases. It will enable man to make progress because he will understand how to remove the cause and core of dis-ease, of unpleasantness, and of ignorance. All of this the hierarchy would convey. I have done more for you tonight than any of you know. And albeit some of you already know that something has been done for you, I assure you that no one knows all that has been done. But your souls know. And now, in return, the hierarchy expects the will to action to manifest. This we expect, the will to action to manifest. And the will to determine that nothing, take note, nothing shall interfere with that will until the action is complete and the whole world is brought to the feet of God, that he may bathe them with his radiance and confer upon them their star individually of Christ's victory. I thank you. May those who have parted the veil replace it. And may peace as a mantle rest upon you.